It's Thursday, and that means it's time for another episode of Trash the Game Plan. Sorry, guys, took a week off last week. Hope you don't hate me now, but I don't think you hate me if you're listening to this, or at least I hope not. I'm your host, Maddie Schmidt, and I am excited to bring y'all another episode. It is December, and I can't believe that. 2022 has absolutely flown by. Christmas is right around the corner, and I'm excited. I love this time of year. Hallmark movies, yes, I do watch them. Yes, I do love them. And no, they are not all the same. They put you in a good mood, so you should watch them. I don't know about y'all, but my Christmas shopping is done. Don't have to worry about any of that. Got things wrapped. I'm ready to roll. Other than worrying about what we're eating, but that's a whole nother story. College football season's over. That's pretty sad, aside from Army and Navy this weekend. But I do love bowl season. There's something just special about it. It's fun. You get to watch it with your family, usually, since it takes place over the holidays and New Year's. And we get to see a lot of teams face off that we don't usually get to see play each other. It's fun. I'm excited. Which, speaking of college football, Pro Football Focus's very own senior college football analyst, Anthony Treash, is joining the podcast today. Today's episode is going to be filled with college football talk. Sorry if you don't like college football, but you totally should. Pick a team, start loving it, because it'll make your life better. I think so, at least. Might add a little stress, but oh well. We're going to talk all things playoffs, transfer portal, bowl games, the whole 9 yards. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I appreciate Anthony joining the podcast. I actually connected with him earlier this year on my other side gig, Guilty as Charged, the Los Angeles Chargers podcast. We talked a bit about the NFL draft and just kind of kept in touch. So let's go ahead and let Anthony in and chat with him about some college football. Welcome to Trash the Game Plan podcast, Anthony. It's awesome to have you on today. How are you?
Doing pretty good. How are you doing?
Doing well. I think we first connected during draft season of this year. Is that right?
Yeah, way back when. It seems like years ago. But here we are into the college football season. It's been an exciting one, and it's only going to get more exciting as we get into bowl season and the playoff.
Yeah, I cannot believe it's December and the regular season is officially over. Aside from Army and Navy this weekend, I don't know where the time has gone.
I know. I mean, it seems like, so much has changed too. A lot of unexpected. I think the one thing I did get right was Michigan over Ohio State, but I thought Bama would still be in the mix. They, of course, lost a couple of games. Tennessee made a push. South Carolina upsetting Tennessee and Clemson's bid in the final couple of weeks. So it's been a heck of a season, a lot of unexpected.
For sure. I will say last weekend, it felt really weird watching the SEC championship and not seeing Nick Saban on the sideline.
I know it felt wrong, and this is why I hate the whole divisions, because it's just like we all know it's still at the end of the day, it's Georgia, Bama are the best teams in the SEC. I know Tennessee, but they don't have Hendon Hooker. He of course tore his ACL. They're not the same with Joe Milton there. It just didn't feel right, even though Alabama did drop a couple of games, and you could say the same with the Big Ten championship. I was actually at the Big Ten championship. Didn't feel right. You see Michigan and Purdue there. Something felt off. It just kind of every other Purdue fan that I saw, they just pretty much were like, yeah, we're just kind of here to have fun. We know what's going to happen. So I'm excited to eventually get out of the way and just let the divisions go away and just kind of let the two best teams in there, as some conferences are doing right now.
Yeah, it was a really weird college, and NFL has been weird this season as well. But let's start touching on the playoffs, arguably the most popular and important topic of the last few days. Georgia, TCU, Michigan, Ohio State. First off, do you think the committee got it right?
I think they did. It's hard to argue anything differently. If you want to just look at the resumes, you got to put TCU in there. I think if you have TCU and Bama play on a neutral field, Bama's probably favored and they're probably winning, but just, you have to look at the resumes. So TCU kind of deserves it just because they didn't have any hiccups other than the Big 12 championship, which was pretty narrow in the end. The one thing that I was kind of looking at was whether or not they put Ohio State at 3 or 4. And I think they got it right by putting them at 4. It also makes for, the what if you get Ohio State, Michigan in the national title game, that would be something, but I'm expecting Georgia, Michigan getting there. So I think all in all, they did what they needed to do, just because they really couldn't have put Bama in there over TCU, even though again I think Bama's probably the better team still. So I think all in all, they probably did what they needed to.
Yeah, I think I would agree. The only thing is, if I was Tennessee right now, I would be absolutely beating myself up because if they didn't lose to South Carolina, I think no questions asked, they're in.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very fair take. I think it opens up so many other possibilities and makes a more drama-filled show on Sunday when they announced it. And, it's funny, like in our PFF College Football Preview magazine, we had in there, I remember writing, South Carolina's not going to be a contender, but they're going to play spoiler just with some of the talent that they have. And sure enough, they did with Tennessee and Clemson there too, because, I mean, both of those teams are kind of in the same boat. If one of those two teams don't lose, it changes everything, right? I mean, I think you're opening up a different conversation, and I think you're probably going to have a lot more upset people because again, it was just kind of hard to be upset with the way they ended up going. It was kind of laid out for them. So I mean, South Carolina, they're definitely the team that kind of wrecked everything and probably made the lives of the committee just a little bit easier.
Yeah, definitely a fun team to watch. I think they got a good hire in Shane Beamer.
Yeah, I mean, you could see it on the recruiting trail. I mean, this team's only trending up. I know, they just had Jaheim Bell enter the transfer portal, which was a tough loss. The dynamic tight end, he's going to be a highly coveted player. But overall, I mean, this team's only trending up. I mean, they crushed the portal last year. I think they're probably going to do the same this next cycle. I think it was a tough start to the season. But you could just see this team grow, and Shane Beamer really challenged him. After the loss to Mizzou, and they're sitting there, they're 6-4. They look and they're like, man, we got to play Tennessee and Clemson to close out the year. They didn't waver. Obviously, they won both games. Everybody thought they would probably lose both, be 6-6, but 8-4. I mean, that's a pretty good year. Now they, got a pretty good bowl here with Notre Dame. Going to be a really exciting matchup there. So, I mean, I would definitely invest in Shane Beamer. I think this program is only going to trend up and just. I mean, I go back to what he did last year. I think that was probably one of the best coaching jobs I've ever seen. You have a guy that was hired to be a graduate assistant, help the coaching staff. You got to look at him and say, hey, we need you to play quarterback for a few games. He's a backup at North Dakota State. And they had to put somebody that they didn't plan on playing quarterback in the position that, wasn't really at the same talent level for SEC play. So, and they still made a bowl and won a bowl last year. So, I mean, he's been off to a great start, and I think it's only going to get better from here.
Yeah, as a Florida Gator fan, I will say I was glad they played their worst game of the season against us. But back to the playoffs, let's talk some predictions. Georgia and Ohio State. Georgia undefeated, Michigan's also undefeated, but Ohio State is probably the most experienced playoff team. They've made the last 3 of 4 playoffs. So Georgia and Ohio State, how do you think that's going to fare out?
Yeah, I think Georgia. I think we'll probably find out closer too, but I feel like a lot of people think maybe Ohio State can pull it off. I personally think Georgia may run away with it. Ryan Day definitely does have the playoff experience. The staff does as well. But I do think just, looking at the matchups, I definitely think Georgia has the upper hand. Just the defense from top to bottom, it's hard to find a hole. I mean, you could look at every single position group, and they have some of the best players in college football. You look at the Ohio State offense. I do think that CJ Stroud is obviously a good quarterback, but I do think that he does have more flaws that are kind of made than some of the public is talking about. I think kind of when the situation gets a little bit more difficult and he has to make some plays off structure, I think that's when we can see him falter a little bit. And we saw it against Michigan kind of down the stretch there. So I think with this Georgia defense, I mean, they're fast, they're physical, they're the best athletes in college football. They're probably the most technically sound group, that we've really seen. It was the same last year. And even with all those guys departing from the NFL, they just kind of supplanted them, and they still have the same types of players that are going to be playing on Sunday. So I think it's going to be really difficult for Ohio State's offense to kind of get anything going. So I do think Georgia's probably going to – I think they could probably win by double digits. I think that's a little bit of a contrarian view. So, we'll see what happens.
It'll be interesting. I do think it's going to be a good game. I'm personally glad that the committee put Ohio State at 4 rather than TCU because I think that Ohio State is going to give Georgia the better game.
Yeah,
But
that is definitely true. I mean, we would probably be seeing one of those semifinal games that's I mean, no, I don't want to, no sliding TCU here. They had a great year, but I mean, that would probably be like a 30-3 type of performance like we've seen in some years. So I definitely think they did get it right with this. And also give Michigan kind of the benefit of the doubt here. They've had a heck of a year. You don't want to have them play Ohio State in the semifinal. And TCU is also, favorable of the matchup with Michigan. So I definitely think they got it right there. Georgia fans probably a little upset, but again, I think, even though I think they could probably, I agree with you, they could give them a better game than TCU. I think in the end, Georgia definitely has the horses to kind of come out on top.
yeah, Georgia lost a lot of guys this year, but you mentioned they're still top tier. They're the best of the best. Is this going to be the case next year? Is Georgia the new Alabama? Are we going to see them every year in the playoffs?
That's a good question. I'm trending yes. I think we're probably seeing something built here. I mean, Kirby Smart was incredibly close up until last year and finally got it done. And the fact that they're doing this, look, I like Stetson Bennett, but there's no doubt that they could have better talent at the position. I think he's played exceptional for him. He's doing exactly what they need him to do. He's a gamer. He's tough. And from an athleticism perspective, he definitely offers a lot, but they don't have that premier arm talent at that position. You get them that. I mean, what are we doing here? I mean, this is going to be Georgia's show for the next, maybe a decade. I definitely think that they're on the path to building something special. That defense, it just doesn't seem like they're slowing down. I think this was the kind of the pivotal year. The fact that they haven't shown any signs of a drop off kind of says to me, okay, this is probably something we may see for a little bit. I think they've kind of found the formula for their defense to sustain that. So I'm trending in that direction of believing, we could be seeing the handoff there from Alabama to Georgia in terms of the juggernaut in college football. I think we're definitely going to see that over the next decade.
That's painful to hear as a Florida Gator. But you're right. Kirby Smart is incredibly talented. And I do see his coaching staff, they're going to get head coaching hires like Nick Saban's does. It's going to be
Yeah,
it's going to be
definitely.
crazy. But Michigan and TCU, what do you see happening here? TCU obviously has put together an incredible season. Kudos to them. But we know Michigan does have the more talented roster.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And I think with the way TCU kind of plays, it could be a little bit difficult. I think Max Duggan's I think his career arc has been something that's not talked about enough because, I mean, he wasn't supposed to be the starter entering this year. He was going to lose his job to Chandler Morris, and understandably so because Max Duggan hadn't really shown it. I mean, the accuracy is some of the worst numbers that we had in our database. And he changed everything. I mean, he's leaning more on kind of what he offers on the ground with his legs. And I think that's where it could be a little bit tough because I think Michigan's going to force him to throw the ball, and that could get a little bit hairy. But still, he went from almost a liability throwing the ball to serviceable, which is really, really hard to do at any level of football. So I think he's had an awesome trajectory there. But like I said, I think it's going to be difficult for this offense to kind of, continue churning against Michigan compared to what they've done against Big 12 defenses, which is kind of night and day there. And also, too, Michigan's offense. I mean, I don't think they've seen an offense kind of like this. No Blake Corum, which is crushing. He was arguably the Heisman 2 weeks ago. And of course, had the knee injury, had to have the surgery, so he's out for the rest of the season. But they still have probably the best skill possession group that we've seen in college football. Some of the best we've seen over the last few years. I mean, they're deep. Donovan Edwards, still I think he's probably one of the best running backs in college football behind Blake Corum. He's kind of what Blake Corum was to Hassan Haskins last year for Michigan. And we've seen that when he's kind of had to take over these last couple of games against Ohio State, against Purdue, and he's been banged up doing it. He's not fully 100%. So if he can get healthy leading up to this game, I mean, that would be game-changing for him. And then, of course, J.J. McCarthy, who I think doesn't get enough respect. I think this is a guy that's going to be possibly a Heisman favorite next year. I think a lot of people have said he can't throw the deep ball, he can't do this, can't do that. Doesn't know when to run, take advantage of his athleticism. But you look at his skill set. it's incredible. He checks every single box there. His off-platform arm talent is truly special stuff. So, I think with him at quarterback, I think they haven't really. They still have the training wheels on him, and I don't think it's because they don't have faith in him. It's just they know we don't need to put a lot on his plate. And I think when they get to the chance or get to the situation where they need to put more on his plate, I think he can take that on. Maybe it's probably not going to be against TCU. Maybe it's against Georgia in the national title game. But overall, it's just going to be very, very hard for TCU to kind of stop this. I think they have a great defense. I think what Sonny Dykes overall has done this year has been obviously nothing short of exceptional. A big fan of Travius Hodges-Tomlinson. He's been there for a few years. Really lockdown corner, even though he is undersized. But yeah, it's going to be really tough. I think with this run game, they can kind of punish him a little bit. Maybe they don't let up many shots downfield, but I think they could probably just keep eating away Michigan, that is, at this TCU defense. So I think this is probably going to be another lopsided game.
So you're taking Michigan and Georgia, I take, for the final championship?
I am, and I have no idea what that could probably end up. It depends on the day. Like, I might say Georgia today, but tomorrow I'm like, I can see Michigan kind of finding a way. Guess we'll see what happens in the semifinal. Probably kind of set in stone who I think will win it all, but I definitely think we'll probably see Michigan, Georgia in that national title game.
Yeah, I think I'm going Michigan all the way, but you're right. They're so close in terms of what they've done this season and talent. I wouldn't be surprised either way, honestly.
Hey, you think Michigan's going to win it all?
That's who I'm taking.
I like that. I definitely think that there's far more people that I think this is just going to be Georgia's show, that they're going to run through it. But I definitely think Michigan could give them a better game this year. Big reason last year, Cade McNamara, he had a great career at Michigan. Now at Iowa, he entered the transfer portal last week or a couple weeks ago. But he was very limited in what he can offer. And then they put JJ in there. JJ had several impressive throws, but it was kind of too late there. So I definitely think this year they're a little bit more evenly matched. But I don't know. I could see something. I'm changing by the day. There's no doubt about it.
It's hard. It's hard. They're both so good, and it's going to be fun to watch. But enough playoff talk. What bowl games are you most excited for?
Oh, that's a good question. We were actually looking at it in the office, and it's hard to find a bowl that I'm not excited about. It seems like the slate's great. The Rose Bowl is going to be great with Penn State, Utah. I think South Carolina, Notre Dame is probably a sneaky great matchup. December 30th. I honestly probably the one I'm most excited for, and people aren't expecting this. It's your Florida Gators against Oregon State.
Why?
I like Oregon State. We like Oregon State here. My buddy Dave Solfaro, he's been chirping my ear about Oregon State for like 2 years. But they're a sneaky good team, and I think this could just be a very compelling matchup in the Las Vegas Bowl. Just with Florida's defense against this run game. It's just like as a college football fan, that's just one where I'm like, I'm kind of pumped for this. It's going to be Saturday afternoon before Christmas, and that's when you kind of get usually the uninspiring bowls. But I think this could be a pretty good one that I'm pretty pumped about.
Yeah, it's an early one, December 17th. But one question for you, Anthony. Are my Florida Gators going to have anyone left on the roster to even play? Because it feels like every day, every time I open Twitter, someone else is entering the transfer portal.
Yeah, that's the tough part about this. And the matchup could get worse as like the next couple of weeks go on, just depending on which players leave, opt out, whatever. But I still have faith in Florida overall and what Billy Napier is doing there. I think we've seen kind of I know there was a lot of panic early on in his tenure about the recruiting aspect because they were kind of down bad. But he's kind of turned it around a little bit, and I think it's going to get better. I don't think it's going to get worse. I also think Patrick Toney, their defensive coordinator, one of their assistants there, he's one of the rising stars in college football. I think that group's just going to continue to get better. So, maybe we see some, the transfers, not great. I think they'll probably bring in a good amount, though, for this next cycle. And I think the recruiting is going to continue to improve. So I think overall in the intermediate to long term, I like Florida. I'm bullish on them. For this bowl game, that's what I really kind of am intrigued with this matchup, because you get an SEC team, awesome guys, but you got a Pac-12 team that I think's very underrated. Again, just a big fan of their run game. Just very aggressive and nasty. So I'm curious to see how how the front fares against the Beavers. So maybe it's a little bit tougher for this game. But again, I like Florida long term. I love the coaching staff. I definitely think that they're on the right track of turning things around overall.
Good to hear. Interesting stat. Dan Mullen, half of his 2021 class, 11 to 22 guys are in the transfer portal. What does this say about what is going on in Gainesville?
That's interesting. I didn't know that. I think it says probably a lot about, I don't want to say like cleaning up the mess, but like coaches just want to bring in their guys, right? Billy Napier and his staff, they didn't recruit those guys, give them opportunities and kind of see if things work out. But I think it's very much just kind of, and we see it all over with other coaching staffs. The recruiting aspect, it's very much a relationship business, and building that bond early helps when you're trying to win as a team and kind of build a culture within a program. So, I can definitely see, why that's happening. I don't think that's a bad thing or something to be worried about with this current staff. It's something that you probably see in most new coaching situations within the first year or two. But yeah, coaches just kind of want to get their guys in. That's where I kind of see this. Maybe it's some stuff that I don't know. It's hard for us to kind of be in there since we're not kind of behind the scenes in those meeting rooms, but not something I'd be worried about from my perspective.
Yeah, I do personally still have faith in Billy Napier, and I know it is going to take time, although I wish it didn't. But another guy leaving Florida, Anthony Richardson, for the NFL draft. Did you think he would come back for another season?
Yeah, I thought he would. In my opinion, we just didn't see it, and I was very cautious to think Anthony Richardson was just going to be a Heisman, star player this year, just given what we saw last year. I do think, a lot of people, and we had Trev Sikkema here, big Florida guy. We talk Florida ball a lot. We talk about Dan Mullen's decision to go with Emory Jones. They want to put Anthony in there too early. And I thought it was a little bit more justified, even though the raw talent was there. And I think a lot of people kind of hated on Dan Mullen a little bit too soon for that, just because he's not a quarterback that can do a lot on his own. Like, he needs a lot of help within an offense, right? Especially against premier competition. His play action versus non-play action splits are some of the most astonishing figures I've ever seen, even at the collegiate level, where they're kind of, different, in a lot of cases. But, just the overall reliance on a perfect ecosystem for him to produce, that's kind of concerning. And I think he's probably going to get that feedback within the NFL, but at the same time, he's a special athlete. He could move positions and just say, hey, I'm going to play this position now. And teams would be like, okay, you're a great athlete. You probably could do it. It might take some time, but I think somebody will take a swing on him just because of his just fantastic raw tools. But he definitely has so much to work on at the quarterback position that I thought he would at least come back for another season, kind of work on that and better his odds of being, a top 10 pick. He could still be a first round guy. Some team wants to take a swing on him in the back end there, but I think I was a little surprised, not super shocked, but I thought he would come back just to kind of help, develop as a passer. But hopefully he kind of works on that in the NFL and, turns some stuff around and has a successful career. Definitely root for him.
Yeah, you touched on everything pretty much perfectly. I was a bit surprised just because obviously he is an incredible athlete. He has the size to make it in the NFL, but the passing isn't always there. And there were a lot of concerns. I think as a Florida alum and from that perspective, we had this big thing around him, like wanting him to be perfect. Oh, he's this incredible person. But it was clear that there is still a lot he needs to work on. And I thought that if he were to come back to Florida, he would develop more. And like you said, maybe be a top 10 pick.
For sure. And, I think, again, I go back to those games that he's had kind of against those top tier defenses in the SEC. And that's where I get really, really concerned, where you just saw the decision-making process. It's almost non-existent. And in the NFL, you take some of these premier defenses and put them in the NFL. They're going to get cooked. It's a different ballgame out there. These guys are so much smarter, faster, so much stronger. It's a completely different ball game. So I think it's going to take them I mean, personally, again, I think it's going to take him a while. I wouldn't probably take a swing on him too early. But again, I hope he proves me wrong. But yeah, I'm right there with you. It definitely, from a passing perspective, just it wasn't there against those premier competition. And I think that's probably, again, something NFL teams are definitely going to take into account when it comes draft time.
Yeah, I have no doubt that he gets drafted, and I wish him nothing but the best, but I definitely don't see him going higher than the second round. But maybe he'll prove me wrong.
Yeah.
Anthony, I've kept you a while, but one last question. This is obviously Trash the Game Plan podcast. So, which college football team do you think needs to trash their game plan before the 2023 season?
Oh wow.
There's a lot, but pick
There
one.
is a lot. Let me think. I th- um I think Michigan State's an interesting one. That was a team I thought was set up for regression this year. I think they were heavy on the portal last year, but I didn't think they got a lot of those proven guys. I definitely think they need to make that a point this year, specifically at the quarterback position. So that's probably one I'm kind of looking at. You could go so many different directions with this question, man. I'm going to be thinking about this all day. But yeah, I think that's probably the first one that comes to mind. And I'm going to be curious too to see what Oklahoma does. I think we all agree this was a disappointing year for them. So I'm going to be curious to see how they kind of evolve, develop, attack the portal again. Clemson's also an interesting one. It's portal season, of course. Dabo is one of the best coaches in college football, but he's also been very anti-portal. I think that has to change. I think Cade Klubnik's going to be a great quarterback for him, but I think there's some stuff that they probably need to evolve on, just from that aspect, but also just schematically on offense. I don't like it. It's very screen oriented. It's incredible that they've been able to do what they've been doing because their entire offense is built around bubble screens. So I definitely think they kind of need to evolve with that, and I think it would also kind of help just the development of some of their players. So I don't know. Those are some programs that kind of come to mind, but that's a heck of a question. That's for sure.
It is. Put you on the spot. But I'm excited to see, speaking of Clemson, how they fare against Tennessee this bowl season.
Yes, that's
That'll be good.
for sure. And now we get a full game of Cade Klubnik against an SEC defense. It's not the best SEC defense, but it's still the SEC. I think that's a really good, no matter what happens with Clemson, I think getting him in that environment is huge to kind of set him up for an offseason and heading into 2023.
Oh, yeah. All right, Anthony, thanks so much for your time today. It was a lot of fun, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. No problem. Thank you.